Released in 2009, Jennifer's Body is perhaps one of the most misunderstood films in the horror genre. The film was directed by Karyn Kusama, who is known for 2000's GIRLFIGHT, and was written by Diablo Cody, who is responsible for the Oscar award-winning screenplay for 2007's JUNO and for the Bobbi Oscar award-winning screenplay for 2024's LISA FRANKENSTEIN, which I will be talking about very soon on the channel, and stars Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried. If you're unaware, Jennifer's Body was a film that was critically panned and received a very low box office, and it was due in large part to being one of film's worst marketing campaigns ever. And in turn, it's left a legacy that left the film greatly misunderstood. But in the past couple of years, it has definitely received a bit of a resurgence, and it has a cult classic-like following. Hi, I'm Bobbi, this is Culture Kitsch, and today we'll be taking a look into the curious case of Jennifer's Body, and along the way I'll be giving you some details on the production of the film. The beginning of the film opens with kind of a flash-forward flashback. So one of the first things that we see is Jennifer in her bed, and we see Needy outside of the room, and then that flashes forward to Needy. We are hearing her narration, and she is in like a mental institution, and she's kind of just talking about how she feels different and things are different because of the events that happened to her and assumingly Jennifer and also the town. The beginning of this cut, which you can find on at the time of filming Peacock, is different from the director's cut, which in Karyn Kusama's like director's cut, we actually start with Needy in the mental institution, which kind of helps to further cement Needy as the main character, because we are following her throughout this entire film. We're not following Jennifer. Jennifer is the thing that is happening to Needy. And so that kind of helped to cement Needy as the main character, because as we will talk about very, very soon, a lot of the marketing wanted to actively push out Needy, who is the main character of Jennifer's Body. One of the first lines uttered in this film is perhaps one of the most iconic.
Hell is a teenage girl.
One of the first instances of speaking, and one of the first things we hear from Needy. We wrap up this entire film in a nice little bow, and just a perfect little, tasty little piece of writing within the first 5 minutes of this movie. So now we flash back through Needy's narration to before everything happened. So all of this takes place in Devil's Kettle, Minnesota. So very small town, very small population, kind of everyone knows everyone type of vibe. We see that Needy is best friends with Jennifer, and they've been best friends since elementary school. I want to take a note here. I want to take a pause. In this film, and many descriptions of this film, they describe Jennifer as a cheerleader. And I just want to come and set the record straight. She is not a cheerleader. She's not a cheerleader. She is in either color guard or on the flag team. We have to get the semantics correct. In a lot of descriptions, they're like, cheerleader, Jennifer, check. No. She's on the flag team. Let's respect the flag team people out there. Thank you so much. Moving on. Funnily enough, Megan Fox was not the first choice to play Jennifer in Jennifer's Body. That actually went to Blake Lively, but she eventually had to drop out due to scheduling conflicts. And to play Needy, Emma Stone and Brie Larson were both up to play Needy, but ultimately, of course, the roles went to Megan Fox for Jennifer and Amanda Seyfried for Needy. I can't really imagine any of those names that I just mentioned being Needy and it coming off in the way that it did. Megan Fox and Amanda Seyfried, they're locked in. It just makes a lot of sense to me. And honestly, I'm not gonna lie to you, I don't know if I really wanted to see Miss Oakland Booty as Jennifer Check. I think Megan Fox was kind of born for that role. So, no hate to Mrs. Ryan Reynolds, but I think Megan Fox is very well cast for that role. So Jennifer and Needy are best friends, but let's be real, there is definitely another layer added onto this. So much so that someone behind Needy who sees her admiring Jennifer and waving to her and everything like that. She's like,
"You're totally lesbi gay."
What? She's my best friend.
lesbian would have, I think, got the point across as well. You know what I mean? Like, I think there's already a word for what you're going for, and it's just lesbian. I think you can just say lesbian. 2009. 2009, folks. 2009. Jennifer convinces Needy to go out that night because there is a band by the name of Low Shoulder that is coming to town. They're from outside, they're from the city, and Jennifer is like enamored.
They're this indie rock band from the city. I saw their MySpace page, and the lead singer's extra salty.
And hearing that is so funny because it just shows the changing landscape of teen speak in like the language of the youths, if you will. Because when she said salty, I was like, why would she describe him like that? And like, I'm not sure if this is like a thing in 2009, like internet speak in 2009, or if it was like a thing that's a convention of Diablo Cody's screenplay. But it's just funny because like in a 2024 mindset, when I hear the word salty and you're describing someone as salty, which is to me like bitter and jealous, apparently to her, to Jennifer, salty meant beautiful. So I'm like, language, what a funny thing. Before they depart, Jennifer is like, wear something cute, okay? And it's so, I'm like, hey guys, hey, so I get that you guys are best friends, but what does that mean, really? Are we hiding something else? Do I feel a hint of repressed sexuality in this dynamic? I'm feeling a lot of repressed sexuality between these two, and that is a very important lens to look at this narrative through. So, just saying, it's a lot of repressed lesbianism happening in this piece, and it just contributes to the layers of the narrative. There are so many layers of this narrative, and that's why I just truly think that the way in which we talk about Jennifer's body, it's not just one layer of people misunderstanding it, and that it's not like just this like sex fest of Megan Fox. Like, there are so many layers to this narrative that people in 2009, mainly the audiences that it really wasn't intended for, were probably not going to be prone to catching. And the queer subtext, or, you know, and then becomes text in this film, is informing a lot of what is happening, especially to Jennifer and in turn to Needy. Like, you cannot replace the lesbianism happening in this piece. It's brilliant. Needy is getting ready with Chip, who is her, you know, lovable little boyfriend, and he's like, oh, like, why do you have to go out? Like, Jennifer always gets you to do what she wants you to do and everything like that. And you can already tell that the film is establishing that Jennifer and Needy have this connection. Now, in everything that I read, they described it as telepathic, but I'm going to put on my critic's hat and my analyst hat here, and I'm going to say that they definitely have a cosmic clitoral connection, because it just, like I said, you just cannot ignore the queer tones within this film and the dynamic that is Needy and Jennifer. Jennifer and Needy are now at the bar, and one of the first things we see, jump scare, Chris Pratt, sorry. It's, when you watch a lot of films from this time, sometimes he will just pop up and I'm like, whoa, oh my God, forgot you were in this. I forgot you were acting at this time. One of the big things that I think is important about this scene, as we see Jennifer kind of maneuvering through this bar, this is like a country bar again, it's like the one place in town that everyone goes to hang out, is Jennifer is very much so a big fish in a little pond. So that's why the allure of this band is just so massive to her. This is a very big deal that guys from the city are coming in, because she has been sought after by all the men who are currently here. She knows everyone. There's nothing exciting and new and fun about this, but like, if she can get a guy from a band who's from the city, like, this could be her ticket out of here. Like, this could expand her horizons beyond the town of Devil's Kettle, which is just known for this like bottomless waterfall pretty much. And also too, it's very important to know how Jennifer talks about boys. Like, you can tell this is what I'm talking about, this whole like kind of big fish little pond thing, because she's like, boys are morsels, like she's just like, they're just guys. Why would I be at all intimidated by them. Like, why would I care? They're just like, a morsel is just like a tiny little thing, like a tiny little, piece to eat. Like, Jennifer's like, they're morsels. We're better than them. We have these. Like, she's like, I don't fear them. Why would I? And to be fair, literally, why would she? She could have the pick of anyone in that town. Very much so. I think it's a deleted scene, either a deleted scene or a scene that was in the trailer and I think it's like the sound has gone viral on TikTok for the reasons that you can probably assume if you've heard it.
You're killing people. No, I'm killing boys. Boys are just placeholders. They come and they go.
That's her philosophy around guys. And I think that's what makes her becoming this like succubus demon that much more compelling, because then she can kind of act on her just being like, guys are whatever, Jennifer and Needy in the bar go up to emo Adam Brody, aka Nikolai, and he's the front man of Low Shoulder. Nikolai immediately clocks that Jennifer's like really into him, and she's like giggly and everything like that. Like, she's really feeling him. And so she offers to go and get him a, I shit you not, 9/11 tribute shooter, which is 2 towers, 2 shot glasses that are red, white, and blue. And Jennifer says you have to drink it really fast or else it turns brown. And so she goes up to the bar and gets it. Needy is like, how are you going to get drinks? You're underage. And she's like, I'll just play Hello Titty with the bartender. She's done this before. She's not new to this. She is true to this. Absolutely. Before Jennifer kind of sets off to go and get the drinks, Needy asks Nikolai, like, why would you guys come to this small town? And Nikolai just basically says,
You live in the city, right?
Yeah, but I think it's really important sometimes to try and connect with our fans in the shitty areas too.
and Needy's like, okay, first of all, kind of rude, I think. Well, I just had like a very emo 2007 bang there. Sorry. She's already peeping that it's something odd. She's like, why would they come here? Like, she's already smelling something a little bit fishy in the air. And so while Jennifer goes and gets the drinks, Needy is kind of over playing games and stuff, and she hears Nikolai and his bandmate talking about Jennifer and trying to be like, like, oh, like, we have to see if she's a virgin and everything like that. Like, they keep talking about her, like, oh, is she a virgin? Is she a virgin? Is she a virgin? And so Needy is like, you're not going to talk about my girl in my presence. Absolutely not. So she goes up and confronts them, and they're just like, oh, okay, relax. Jennifer finally comes back. She's holding the tray of the 9/11 tribute shooters, mind you. And she comes back and she says, oh, one of the towers isn't full enough. And that was when, in my mind, it dinged. I was like, is Jennifer's Body a 9/11 movie? The answer is, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. And I wish I would have remembered this subplot when I was doing my 9/11 video, because it is a post 9/11 movie. Like, it has a whole subplot that kind of talks about the aftermath of tragedy and how we deal with it, and how sometimes people take advantage of tragedy for their own purposes. See, the point of, let's take a pause, the point of horror, or one of the points of horror, one of the core tenets of horror, is to be social commentary in a lot of ways. And so I think a lot of people assume that, of course, the gender dynamics kind of take precedent as far as social commentary goes in this film, but also it has a very strong political and cynical view of kind of post 9/11 American culture that's baked into this like subplot that happens with the town and the school and the killings and everything like that. Like, it's very, very interesting. We'll get into it as we get deeper into the film, but just know Jennifer's Body is technically a 9/11 film. I love the movies, I just love when they surprise me like that. Low Shoulder begins to play, and to add some context, according to Karyn Kusama, in her mind she was kind of picturing a band like Snow Patrol or Fall Out Boy to kind of be the guiding light of what this band would be, like kind of a small, at this point they're like a small indie band, like trying to make it big, and to the point where they actually wanted to get Pete Wentz in, I think they basically did get him, but like there were scheduling conflicts and things like that ultimately had him drop out. But they wanted to get Pete Wentz of Fall Out Boy to play the Nikolai role. He drops out, and so eventually it goes to Adam Brody, but that's kind of the like sonic identity of what a group like Low Shoulder would be. So as they start to play, there is a small fire that begins to lick up in the building, and so now the building very quickly catches on fire, and there's a look on Nikolai's face where he's not at all like, whoa, like what's happening, like he's smiling. So that's how I know, through context clues, they started that fire. This is also a one step down from direct reference to a concert fire that happened in February of 2003 that's known as like the Great White Fire that claimed over 100 lives, and it was in kind of like a similar venue. So this film is definitely talking about tragedies in like kind of indirect ways, be it 9/11, be it the Great White Fire. And like I said, the attitude that it has towards it is very, very interesting, and I think it's a lens of the film that is not often taken into account. One could say. Jennifer and Needy make it out. Jennifer is almost in this like trance. It's almost as if Low Shoulder were playing this like siren song to her, and so she's just like kind of like, she's not like with it, and Needy is like, okay, I know how to get out of here, like bitch, let's go. So they get out. Needy is freaking out. Jennifer's still kind of in a daze, and who do they see but emo Adam Brody pulling up with a drink in hand. He's just like, oh my gosh, so glad you guys are okay. Do you guys want a drink? You want to go back to my van? Hold up, wait a minute. Do you see the place that's on fire with people who are actively immolating, running out of it? And you're like, let's go to my van? Okay. Spawns of Satan, Low Shoulder is. Nikolai convinces Jennifer to go with him into the van, and assumingly Needy thinks she's not going to see Jennifer again. Like, she's just like, my friend has been taken by this band. Needy runs home and she calls Chip, her boyfriend, not emergency services or the police or anything like that. She tells him that Jennifer has been taken by this band and that a fire broke out at Melody Lane, which is the name of the bar. And Chip is just like, bump what's happening to Jennifer, like, you know, this fire is crazy. I just want to make sure you're okay and things like that. And Needy's like, no, something's up, like something is happening. I don't have a good feeling about Jennifer going with those guys. And so while they're on the phone, Needy is like, okay, I hear something. Someone's knocking at the door. She goes to check. Nothing's there. Hashtag lo, hashtag behold. Something is in the house. What is that something? Jennifer covered in what? Blood. Jennifer's there covered in blood. She's like nonverbal, post-verbal. She's like screeching, and she is just looking at Needy. And Needy's like, what happened to you? Like, how did you get here? Like, what is going on? And Jennifer doesn't say anything. And she walks over to Needy's refrigerator, pulls out a Boston Market rotisserie chicken, starts tearing that thing up. In that moment, that's the most relatable moment of this whole movie. I have been there before. Not tearing up a Boston Market chicken, but like sometimes you get a little hungry and you just kind of sit in the refrigerator door and you're just tearing something up. Like, just, she was laying into that thing like it was no tomorrow. But very soon after that, she throws up black, spiky bile. So needless to say, the Boston Market chicken did not rest well on the tum-tum. She's doing all this and begins laughing afterwards. And Needy is damn near in shock because she's like, what's going on? What is happening? Jennifer starts just pushing Needy around, pushes her up against the wall, and it's just like, are you scared? And Needy's like crying. She's like, yeah, I'm scared. And it's just, and then Jennifer just disappears. We see Needy and Jennifer, and they're at school the next day. Needy is damn near catatonic, and Jennifer walks in looking radiant, glowing, and beautiful. And she's just like, hey, how's it going? And Needy's like, do you not remember anything that happened last night? And Jennifer's like, what are you talking about? Like, she's acting so oblivious. She's like, what is your problem? And so Needy is trying to like jog her memory and convince her. And she's just like, you don't remember what happened last night? And Jennifer's like, okay, you need to relax. So then walks in J.K. Simmons with hair, and he's basically talking to his students after the tragedy, and he relates to them that 8 of their fellow classmates died in that fire that took place the night before that Jennifer and Needy were in, essentially. And so everyone is very somber and sad in the classroom but Jennifer. She is laughing and she's like, oh my god, like the Spanish teacher ate shit. And Needy is like, what is wrong with you? During J.K. Simmons' teacher speech, he's just like, we have to do our best to move on. We can't let that damn fire win. And again, I think because I had just done this 9/11 video and I've spent a lot of time looking at what people were saying in the immediate aftermath, it was a lot of that same rhetoric of like, we can't let terrorism win. We can't let this fire win. And then you can see the film's very kind of cynical viewpoint in what Jennifer says in response to that, which is the fire already won. Like the thing has already happened, And I think that just shows this really interesting subplot that's beginning to kind of build and bubble as we're moving deeper into the narrative. Now it is time for Jennifer to take her first victim, and she sets her sights on the very visibly mourning football player. I think his name is Jonas. And she sees him in the football field and she's just like, hey, your friend Craig, who, mind you, when we cut back to the club, Craig was like making a respectable pass at her. She's like, hey, Craig, like she didn't even have a full conversation with him. But to Jonas, she says, I was probably one of the last people to talk to Craig, and he said that we would have made a really like banging couple. So this kid is mourning, but he's also like, well, Jennifer's hot, so I'm gonna deal with this in my own way. And she's just like, we should totally get together, come with me. She takes him into the woods, unzips a little bit of her shirt, and then unhinges her jaw and proceeds to eat him. Proceeds to nibble on his entrails. Names him, essentially, to the point where his scream could be heard from the parking lot, where the J.K. Simmons teacher character, he's just like, let it out, son. Let it out. And then he's like, oh, okay, wait a minute. That might not be screams of mourning. I think that is screams of agony and pain. Let me investigate. And so he does. We cut to Needy. She's listening to the radio. And now we see that Low Shoulder has released this song and positioned themselves as the heroes of this fire. They're like, they're doing this radio station interview and they're just like, yeah, this really affected us and we're just trying to stay strong, through this whole thing. And it's the thing that always happens in times of tragedy, where people will not hesitate to center themselves even if this thing has nothing to do with them. The radio DJ was like, yeah, they helped people escape the fire, and really like they're positioning themselves as these great, guys who did all of these things, and it's helping their star rise because people think that they're these heroes. They're not. And so Needy is just like, ugh, whatever. J.K. Simmons then finds the boy in the forest, maimed, and calls for help. And what I appreciate about this movie is that it is a horror movie, and kills just, they tend to happen as you would in a horror movie. But the one thing that they always set out to show is like humanizing the victims of Jennifer, and really anyone who is, receives any type of violence in this film. Everyone is mourned or grieved, or like the loss is really explored there. So with this football player kid, Like, we see his mom seeing his body in a body bag coming out of the forest, and we see the tributes that are put up in the school of his fellow classmates mourning him. And so, like, it kind of goes with the subplot that's around how we deal with grieving and how we deal with mourning, and like the culture around that, and like the commodification of grief in a lot of ways. And it's a very interesting thing that you don't really tend to see happen. Like, kills kind of are very much so like a convention of horror movies, in that they happen and then it feels like there's no real ripple effect. Like, when I think about something like Scream, like when Drew Barrymore's character is killed, sorry, spoilers, when Drew Barrymore's character is killed, like, she almost just becomes like legend. Like, her and her boyfriend just become legend. Like, the students aren't actively mourning. In fact, they're not making fun, but they're like, oh my god, like, there's a killer on the loose, there's a killer on the loose. Whereas this movie does seek to humanize these characters by exploring what the loss of them looks like. After Jennifer kills the football player, she takes a little swim, and she does it. And the scene where it's happening, she's like assumingly fully naked. She wasn't actually naked. It was like a nude swimsuit that Megan Fox was wearing. But I think the film does explore small aspects of Megan Fox's sexuality in a way that I think is done tastefully, especially I think done a lot more tastefully than a film like the Michael Bay Transformers movies. And like, those are movies that I enjoy. Like, Transformers Revenge of the Fallen is like my favorite of the Transformers movies. And if you've seen any of those movies, you know the lens in which and the gaze in which they approach Megan Fox and her character. But I think with this film, you can tell that it's a little bit different when you have a female director and a female writer at the helm. The way and the lens in which and the gaze in which they view her is going to be different than when you have a male director and a male writer at the helm. Literally, the whole thing of like the female gaze and the male gaze is not just how the audience sees it, but it's the intended viewpoint of the people making the thing. So it's the director, it's the writer, it's the cinematographer. What gaze in which are they placing upon, a character or an idea or a sequence of events? Like, that is what the female gaze and male gaze is. So there is a very female gaze that is approached with depicting Jennifer, who has now become this succubus essentially. And they don't do it in a way where you're just seeing a lot of TNA, like, I think it's tastefully done, so to speak. Later that night, Jennifer is like feeling it. She is feeling herself. She's like, I am feeling so scrumptious. I'm feeling so yummy. She calls Needy. And Needy is just like, great. I'm glad you're feeling so sexy and gorgeous in the face of literal tragedy all around us. Someone literally died today. And Jennifer's like, oh my God, move on. Like, that was so yesterday. Like, I'm what's happening today. I am radiant today. And you can definitely see that Jennifer is beginning to explore her powers. Like, we see the famous scene where she like lights her tongue on fire and then it like heals immediately. And she's on the phone with Needy and she just says like, I am a god. Jennifer is really, really feeling herself. Like, she's at her peak at this moment. That will not last for very long. So as the weeks go on, Jennifer is quite literally a sunshine in the middle of a rain cloud. Like, the rest of the school is, in deep mourning for the killings and the fire and the, attention that's come from that. And there's literally a scene where she's walking down the hallway and everything else is in like blue and gray tone. And Jennifer is this like pop of pink and hearts and sunshine, and she's just gorgeous and like walking down the hallway and like she's feeling herself in the face of everyone else being like so drab and boring, and not boring, mourning. And it's just, the juxtaposition is just so great. And you can assume that she's just been like sustained off of, feeding off of the football player. Like, she gets this reinvigoration, you could say, off of her killings. The kind of circus that is the media when it comes to any type of tragedy. Now the media has really descended upon the town, and there's this like what Needy describes as America's tragedy boner. Like they can't really escape, you know, this. Number one, now there's this like killer on the loose, which is just Jennifer, and also two, the fire that claims so many lives in this very, very tragic way. And when this is happening, this song, you know, through the trees and whatever, is becoming this national hit, and it's becoming this like anthem of this town, and they're singing it at these vigils and everything like that. Again, Low Shoulder started the fire. They started the fire, and we will then find out later in the film are in part responsible for Jennifer and her killings. They started the fire to become these heroes of this tragic event. And to the point where J.K. Simmons is just like, the Low Shoulder has so graciously decided to release Through the Trees, which has become our little anthem, and they're going to contribute 3% of the profits to community funds for, you know, victims and things like that. And Needy is like, she feels like she's losing her mind, because she's just like,
they didn't help anybody escape the fire. I don't even know how that rumor got started.
Rumor? Rumor? It's true. It's on their Wikipedia.
They used us.
You take that back, Needy Lesnicki.
Girls.
We need them now more than ever.
It kind of reminds me of the episode of The Simpsons, Lisa the Iconoclast, where she debunks the myth of this like revered character, Jebediah Springfield. And he's like, there's a lot of lore and myth surrounding him, and the residents of Springfield really hold on to it. They've mythologized it to the point where they believe it. They won't hear anything else. And Lisa finds out that a very big, you know, belief about him is a complete lie. And she then ultimately decides that, like, you know, it's better for people to have something to believe in times of, you know, tragedy or in times of joy or things like that. So it's not worth it to like divulge the truth to the town. And so this feels like the opposite of it. This is the other side, where Needy is like, no, you guys need to know that like this is not the guiding light that we think it is. Like this is BS. Like all of what they're doing is just crummy. They're trying to take advantage of us in this obviously very difficult time. And no one in the class is trying to hear that from her. But we then see Jennifer is now looking still gorgeous because it's Megan Fox, but she's like her skin is red and irritated, and she just looks drained. And she says to Needy, she's just like, I feel like it's wearing off. And Needy's like, what's wearing off? And then she just goes quiet. So Needy, again, at this point, has no idea what has happened to Jennifer, but she just knows that something is different. So during this, they are confronted by this guy named Colin, who is a very emo, artsy-fartsy writer, and you can tell that from the everything about him. And he is trying to make a pass at Jennifer, and she's just like, I don't care, I'm not interested in you, kick rocks, essentially. And so it's not until Needy is like, oh, like, you know, Colin's actually nice, like he's a cool guy. And it's not until Needy shows interest in Colin that Jennifer comes back and she's like, actually, Colin, I will go out with you. Meet me at this time, at this place, and like we'll hang out. And so again, the cosmic clitoral connection, the CCC between Needy and Jennifer, it's happening again, because Jennifer did not care about that boy until Needy cared about that boy. Listen, I know a crazy bisexual when I see one. Bisexual to bisexual, I see you, Jennifer check. I really do. Colin and his lip ring show up to this abandoned, essentially, house, and he definitely is looking around like, damn, bitch, you live like this? Like, Jennifer's basically told him to show up to an abandoned house. She starts to seduce him, and she keeps saying, like, you know, I need you frightened, I need you hopeless. And I think it was easier with the football player because she could immediately kind of go after him because he was already incredibly vulnerable, whereas Colin is I think a little bit intrigued, by Jennifer, but he's not scared of her, and she needs him to be scared in order to feed off of him. Now, cut to Needy and Chip are having sex for the first time, and apparently it lasted 4 minutes, which is what happens in high school. And so while they're doing it and Needy's like having a good time, she begins to see like hallucinations. She sees blood dripping from the ceiling. She sees Jennifer looking like a literal demon, also with Jonas, who's the football player that she killed. Like, she's starting to crack up, and so she's having sex and Jennifer is feeding on Colin at the same time. And again, it's the cosmic connection thing that I was talking about, to the point where Jennifer tells Colin, I need you frightened, I need you hopeless. And then telepathically, Needy starts saying hopeless, hopeless, hopeless. And she's starting to like freak out because she's seeing these things and she's just like, why is this happening? And it's because of their like telepathic connection, to the point where she's like, it sounds like she's enjoying it more and more, but she's actually freaking out. And Chip is like, is it because I'm too big? Like, he literally is just like, he's like, am I too big? Like, he's like, I'm doing something right now. And it's like, no, Chip, she's having hallucinations while you are inside of her. She's terrified. She puts her clothes on, she gets in her car. As she's driving away, she starts seeing these visions again of Jennifer covered in blood, Jennifer with this like look on her face. She looks like a demon because Jennifer is a demon. And then while she's driving, she just sees Jennifer in the road and she like swerves and she keeps seeing her. Needless to say, Needy is starting to crack the fuck up. Understandably so. So she finally gets home. She gets to her room, opens the door, turns on the light. Who does she see in her bed? Jennifer. Jennifer is in her bed, acting like nothing has been going on. Like she wasn't just out in the street covered in Colin's blood, literally. And so now we get to the scene that essentially a lot of the film's marketing was centered around, even though the film is not really centered around it, which is the Jennifer and Needy kiss. In the context of the narrative, Diablo Cody kind of described the purpose of this scene to be that it's like kind of a culmination of these deep feelings that you can feel in really intense relationships. Now, a bit of it feels like an avoidance of wanting to say the sometimes like queer relationships that we find ourselves in youth and adolescence, like intense queer friendship that is now turned into a relationship. That's what that moment is in my mind. But a lot of the film's marketing was centered around this kiss, so much that like the trailers mentioned it. It was in a lot of the like print ads and things like that. Like, this is what they were trying to hinge this movie on, being like hot lesbian action. It was to the point that in a BuzzFeed article from a couple of years ago, Karyn Kusama basically said that they kind of reduced the marketing for the film down to Megan Fox hot, essentially. Like, they really wanted to center in on this kind of growing sex symbol status that Megan Fox was reaching. And the way that they did it was in a lot of the posters and ads for the film, it's risque and like suggestive and everything like that. And the studio also had an idea to do a guerrilla marketing campaign on amateur porn sites that would have Megan Fox doing live chats on amateur porn sites to promote the film. Luckily, they were able to talk, Karyn Kusama and Diablo Cody were able to talk the studio off of that ledge and be like, we cannot do that. Like, that is not something that we can do, and we can't subject Megan to that. And luckily they were able to concede and be like, okay, we won't do that. But it just shows that like the studio's marketing department, who from a lot of the research that I did was comprised of a lot of men, they just didn't understand what this movie was and who this movie was for. And now, in maybe more contemporary times, I should say, you would hope that the marketing for a film like this would be better, but it's considered to be one of the worst ad campaigns because it misses the mark on what this movie actually is in so many ways. And Karyn Kusama also recalled that she, like, when she and Diablo Cody would kind of push back on some of the ideas that the marketing department would pitch for the film, she remembers receiving an email where someone in the marketing department just said, "Jennifer's sexy, she's still your boyfriend." And she was like, it just felt very caveman and primitive how they were trying to kind of position this film within, you know, the market and everything. So the kiss doesn't last very long at all. And the reason why Jennifer is there is to basically explain to Needy what is going on, like what's happening with her and what happened the night of the fire. So we do like a flashback within a flashback. The band takes Jennifer in their van and they're, you know, trying to be like, you know, like, are you a virgin and things like that. And she's like, you know, yeah, I'm a virgin. I've never done sex before. Like, you guys should get someone who's experienced and things like that. And they're just being very cruel to her. The reason why they have taken her and the reason why they want a virgin is because they want to sacrifice a virgin to Satan to become famous. So they're lamenting to Jennifer, who's like tied up against this rock, and they're just like, you know how difficult it is for indie bands to make it these days? If you don't get on Letterman or if you're not on some soundtrack, like, you've got no chance of being famous. So what we've decided to do is sacrifice a virgin to Satan. So these fucking idiots decide to sacrifice Jennifer to Satan to be as famous as, get this, Maroon 5. That's who they cite.
Want to be a big loser, or do you want to be rich and awesome like that guy from Maroon 5?
Maroon 5.
And not to say that Maroon 5 isn't famous, because obviously they are, but you've kidnapped a young girl, have tied her up, planned to kill her as a sacrifice to Satan to become as famous as Maroon 5. Idiots. And I think this scene is one of the real horrors of the film. Like, this is a scene that I think, me as a woman watching it, this is where I feel the real horrors of it, because they are essentially like making light of the fact that they're going to brutalize this girl that they just met, or that they've taken essentially, and do it all for the sense of, you know, becoming these stars or whatever it is. Like, they are, it's just so unabashedly cruel. And to the point where I was doing research, I saw that Megan Fox, she was like, I really had difficulty kind of filming this scene because it was just so kind of unabashedly cruel. And, you know, a lot of those emotions I was really feeling at that time, because I just felt so, I felt like I was inhuman in the way I was being treated in the scene. And there were a lot of layers that I think Diablo Cody and Karyn Kusama really considered in that scene. And also, like, we're making sure to keep Megan safe and things like that. But I think that is an added layer onto the film that, again, if this film got mainly panned by male critics, they're not going to catch how horrific this situation is, because to a lot of the people, you know, femme people watching it, to the people who experience gendered violence, that's not something that is out of the realm of possibility of happening. Like, this is not a convention of a movie. This is something that has and can happen. And it kind of shows the duality that happens in this movie, whereas Jennifer is, she's predator, but she's also prey. You know, there are a lot of, you know, this but that in this film. And this is the scene that really culminates that Jennifer, while she is going around killing boys and things like that, she was also a victim. She is a victim. So using a spell that they literally found online, they sacrifice Jennifer, but the spell doesn't quite work all the way because she doesn't die. And we'll find out in literally the next scene why that is, but she just explains to Needy that she's like, I didn't die, but whenever I'm full like I am now, like, I'm invincible. Like, you can't kill me. Like, I can't be hurt. And so Needy is like, what do you mean, like, when you're full? Like, what does that mean? And Jennifer's not telling her, like, how she gets full. She's not telling her like how she's killing these boys and drinking their entrails and blood. Like, she's not telling her any of that, but she's just like, when I'm full, I'm a god, essentially. And so Needy is just like, this is a lot. I'm gonna need for you to get out. And so Jennifer leaves in a huff. The next time we see Needy, she decides to do some independent research of her own to the library. What Needy finds out is that what has happened to Jennifer is something called demonic transference, which is essentially when you plan to sacrifice a virgin to Satan, but the sacrifice is actually impure. And so this demon has basically entered Jennifer and is kind of housed in her, and is using her body as a vessel, essentially. And Jennifer has to kill in order to sustain this, you know, succubus demon that's inside of her. The spell that the band does kind of got messed up, even though they still are reaping the benefits of fame. But what's happened, because Jennifer was not a virgin, she is now being possessed by this demon, and this demon requires her to kill in order to sustain it. And so that's why when Jennifer's full, having just freshly killed, she's beautiful and vivacious and stunning. It's almost like this is her magnet that pulls these boys in to be able to feed more. But when she hasn't fed and when she hasn't killed in a long time, that's when she looks drained and tired and things like that. So Needy is telling all of this to Chip, and Chip is like, I just don't believe you. And Needy is like, I need for you to understand that I just need for you to hear me on this. Jennifer is like, there's something wrong with her. She's evil, and I need you to, you know, basically be on your guard. And so Needy is telling him all this because the spring formal is right around the corner, and that's basically going to allow for Jennifer to feed on the entire male population of the school in one night. And so Needy is like, I can't let her do that. And so Chip is kind of like, okay, whatever, I guess, like, I'll do what I need to stay safe, but I just don't think that this is true. Throughout the film, Jennifer, at the beginning of the film, had no interest in Chip. She just didn't care about him. She cared about Needy. And now she's beginning to show interest in Chip because Needy is interested in Chip. She's dating Chip. So Jennifer wants Chip to be her next Chip meal, munching on him. Exactly. So now it is the night of the dance. We see the very high school tradition of taking pictures right before you go with siblings and family members and things like that. So now as we head to the dance, and Needy is in her Superstar Barbie pink dress, she's kind of looking around trying to see if Jennifer is there. But Jennifer is not there. Jennifer has now found Chip, who is walking to the dance. And she tells Chip, hey, so Needy is actually, she was cheating on you with Colin. And, you know, I just think it's so crazy because you're such a great guy. And she's a seducing Chip. And so she takes him to this abandoned swim house, essentially, to kill him. And while Jennifer is making out with Chip, Needy can literally feel on her lips what's happening. And so she's like, oh my God, Jennifer has Chip. I need to go and find them. She makes it to this abandoned swim house where Jennifer is already munching on Chip's neck, taking a bite out of Chip, if you will. And Needy jumps in to save her man immediately. And so when that happens, we get the iconic, you know, divas throwing jabs back and forth at each other. Needy being like, you're so insecure. And Jennifer's like, how could I ever be insecure? I was a snowflake queen. And Needy being like, yeah, 2 years ago when you were socially relevant. And Jennifer's like, I am socially relevant. And then Needy came with the uppercut and was just like, and when you didn't need laxatives to stay skinny. And Jennifer's like, I'm going to eat your soul and shit it out.
Only murder boys.
I go both ways.
Before Jennifer can get to Needy and harm her, Chip, who is actively bleeding out and dying, stabs Jennifer through the stomach and is trying to save his lady or whatever. And she takes out the steak or whatever it is, and she looks to Needy and she's just like, you got a tampon? I thought you might be plugging. And then she like jumps out of the window and goes away. And so unfortunately, Chip does die. And so this then brings us to kind of the flashback at the beginning of the film where Needy is outside of Jennifer's room, and she's now like, you've killed my boyfriend, you've been running amok all over town, now you're done, actually, it's curtains on you, actually. And so she goes into Jennifer's bedroom and they're having this tussle back and forth, and like Jennifer like bites her on the neck and everything like that, but ultimately Needy has had enough, and she takes a box cutter to the heart to Jennifer and thus kills her. Now, this does not come without consequences, of course, because Jennifer's mom sees Needy on top of her daughter who's covered in blood, and this gets Needy sent to the mental institution, essentially. So it is there that we're basically at the end of the film, and Needy says in narration, scholars of the occult don't know that if you get bitten by a demon and survive, you essentially absorb some of their ability. Needy absorbs the ability to levitate and float, and so she's able to break out of the asylum that she's in. The first and only place that she is heading is to find out where Low Shoulder are. And so in the credits is when we see that Needy has found where Low Shoulder are, and she exacts revenge not only for herself, but for Chip and for the town and for Jennifer. And that's the movie. This is a film that I think was kind of this really misunderstood piece. I think it's a film that deserves a second look if you haven't watched it in a very long time. And it's also a movie that is the kind of prime example of why we still need physical media and institutions like cable, because that is where this movie was able to get kind of a second life. Like, it was able to get its second life through DVD sales, which used to be the thing that kind of really helped to bolster and boost certain movies that like didn't do well theatrically for whatever reason. Like, they could get a whole new life and reach a whole new audience in physical media, which is essentially what happened with Jennifer's Body. And I think it has been embraced by a whole new generation of people, but it's not to discredit that there were many queer critics, there were many women who were reviewing this film whose voices were essentially getting drowned out by a chorus of men who this film was not for, and a chorus of male audience members and critics alike who they felt played, or they felt like they didn't get the movie that they thought they were being promised. And again, it bubbles all the way back to the studio, who just didn't understand the movie that they were seeking to put out, which is something that happens a lot. It feels like in horror movies that center female protagonists. This is a film that has a lot of layers when it comes to the whole 9/11 subplot. They have a lot of layers with the queer tones that are in it. There's so many really complex and really interesting dynamics that are happening on screen and on the page of the screenplay that I just don't think were given enough consideration, because they weren't put in front of the right audiences. Because a lot of women and a lot of queer women really love this movie for a very obvious reason, because in a lot of ways it's for them. It's a movie that I think is a very interesting and curious case, and I think is ultimately kind of, had a bit of a happy ending. It's come back around in the cultural zeitgeist as being embraced and better understood, one could say. So that wraps up this week's Be Kind recap review. I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, let me know in the comments below. Do you love Jennifer's Body? Do you hate Jennifer's Body? Are you just kind of okay on it? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you liked what you see here on this channel, we do a lot of videos like this that are recap reviews. We also do commentaries. We also do video essays. There's so much stuff in my online video essay store that is Culture Kitsch. I really do hope that you will consider subscribing to stick around and stay in the Culture Kitsch collective. As always, I'm Bobbi. This is Culture Kitsch. I do not have an outro yet, but I will see you next week.